Hello, welcome everyone. Hello, welcome, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. We have a wide diverse group here. It's nice to see you all. Feel free to put your name and your location in the chat while we wait for another minute or so for everyone else to join us. Welcome everyone. Yes, feel free to share with the group where you're joining in from. Hi, Bob from Seattle. Arizona, Ottawa, Cambridge, Mass, Costa Rica, Arizona. Thank you.
I'm David from Rustenburg, South Africa.
Nice, welcome. Hi, David. And we have people from Brazil, Norway, Chile, all over. Thank you for joining us today. So we will be getting started. So I'm Alex Arnold. I'm the executive consultant for the Taos Institute, and it's my pleasure to have you here today. We just a few words about the Taos Institute. So we are a nonprofit educational organization, and we promote social constructionist, relational, and appreciative theory and practices. We do so through a variety of events and activities, one of which is the Taos Conversation series, for which we're here today. We also have workshops and courses online. We have an online community, the Taos Institute Commons, and we encourage you all to join and to participate, to share your announcements, questions, and connect with each other. We have a resource library with recordings of past events. We also have Taos Institute publication and over 90 books that are free for downloading in our World Share book series. So we encourage you all to share and spread these resources. And so I will keep this very short and introduce our hosts today. So it's really a pleasure to welcome Pedro Martins, one of our Taos associates, and Sheila McNamee, Vice President of the Taos Institute. So welcome, and thank you so much for hosting this Taos conversation on the topic of the role of therapy in challenging times.
Thank you, Alex. And thanks everybody who's here. It's really nice to see all your faces and your names here. I am Pedro Martins. I'm here in Brazil, and I'm a Taos associate, and I work mainly as a clinical psychologist. Therapy is what I do. And I just wanted to share with you a little bit the context for, from where this conversation, the idea for this conversation came. So I am, as I said, most of my time in doing clinical work, but on the other part of my time, I have been talking a lot to other therapists, mostly people who are starting, beginner therapists who are joining in this world, this incredible world, mostly from social constructionist ideas. And, there's one thing that always strikes me in this kind of conversation, which is therapy can be such a lonely activity, and we're dealing with, all of this stuff in the world. There's so much going on, and we sometimes feel overwhelmed, and we feel like we're held accountable and we are responsible for so much. And when that gets overwhelming, I have learned through the years that I really need to get out of my head. And I've learned, from social construction that the best way to get out of your head is heading into conversation. And so Sheila was kind enough to join me in this idea. And I said, Sheila, I really need to get out of my head. Can you talk to me a little bit? And we thought, well, maybe we should invite others to join us into this conversation too. So this is how we are together here. Do you want to say something about this, Sheila?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, thank you everyone for being here. And thank you, Pedro, for always being such a fabulous conversational partner. So and inviting me into these really critical conversations. These are challenging times, just for everyone. And for those of us who are therapists, or in any of the helping professions, it's kind of a double weight, because it's what we experience on a day-to-day basis, and then what all the people we are working with are bringing to us. So what we want to do is just kind of begin and to have some of our own thoughts, share some of our own thoughts with you. But we'd also love to hear what your thoughts are about challenges that you confront, or ways in which you have found helpful in dealing with the challenges of today's world. So, Pedro, what have you been thinking about the role of therapy in these difficult times?
Yes. So thank you for asking that. And I was thinking that therapy is now part of the larger culture, more than in any time before. So it has come from, what are these weird people doing inside of their offices, to like, posting on social media that this is my therapist and my therapy is going on well, and etc. So more than in any time before, therapy and psychological discourse is part of culture. And so when I think about the role of therapy in these challenging times, that's the first thing that comes to my mind. What kinds of human understandings, what kinds of human images are we creating with our discourses about therapy, about people, about what their problems are, So, of course, in social media and everything, but also in the culture at large. So, I'm always reminded of Ken Gergen's first argument back then as in social psychology as history. We are in a discipline that our object listens to what we say about it. So social psychology, he was saying, doesn't only reflect what the case is, but it really constructs the world in some way. And because therapy is now so prevalent in culture, I think that we have this really important role in shaping first, understand the way people understand what they're going through. So is this my problem? Is this a society problem? Is this a problem in the culture? And I think that we have an active role in the ways we help people define their relationship to the world. And in a second way, I also think that therapy is participating, the kinds of practices that we propose are inviting us to participate in the world in particular ways. So are we helping individualize social problems, or are we helping individuals navigate social problems in different ways? Do we help internalize complex times as problems of different individuals, or are we helping people understand or come to an understanding that the dilemmas that they live are part of this world? So that's one thought that comes to mind. I would like to invite you to talk a little bit about it, Sheila, which is our responsibility in how we help shape the culture in these complex times.
Yeah. Yeah, I think what you have said raises really important points. Mostly, as constructionists, we put the value on language practices, and by that, I'm not talking simply about words. I'm talking about all embodied activity. But that being the cornerstone of a constructionist perspective, when we look, as you pointed out, to how dominant psychological discourse is in our lives, I mean, it used to be used to be decades, I mean, hundreds of years ago. Now, psychological discourse is just an everyday discourse we all talk about. I'm so depressed today. I'm feeling really anxious. Almost everything we do comes from that psychological discourse. And with that as a dominant discourse, then as you point out, we are further individualized, thinking about my problems and should I share my problems with my friends? No, I don't want to burden them, so I go to a therapist. And just pointing out that how dominant that is, I think allows us to open up and say, okay, there's a lot going on in the world, and as individuals, we aren't individually suffering. We are kind of collectively suffering. And so is it possible to deconstruct our ideas? This is something I've been thinking about. Can we deconstruct our ideas about therapy? Where it takes place, how it takes place. Do we go to a clinic? Do we go to a therapist's consultation room? Do we go to a hospital? Why don't we take a walk in a park with a person that we're trying to help or who's seeking our help? Can we think of the other professions that people engage in as a form of therapy? So, for example, education as a form of therapy, and inviting people into really looking at how we talk about the cultural and global issues that confront us, and to help people realize that they aren't alone in feeling anxious or depressed or what have you. So I think, we're at this place where we might be able to deinstitutionalize therapy as a profession, and make it more human, more humanizing as a process. And I think that that's where we all start from. We all start from it, thinking of it as a very humanizing process. But then all of the professional constraints, like ethical codes that, if you suspect self-harm, you must report the person. And then in reporting the person to some authorities, does that make their situation worse or better? That if we have to do something, and our doing that is supposed to be helping people, but in fact, perhaps harms them more, we need to really think about these things. And so I think what the challenges we confront today really are doing is opening kind of Pandora's box and allowing us to reconsider what is going on in therapy and what therapy is or should be as a profession.
Yeah, absolutely. I really like what your point of making therapy a more humanizing sort of activity. And it gets me thinking about how there's one thing that therapists hopefully know how to do better than anyone else, which is to create these great contexts of conversation where meaning can float around, and we can negotiate things differently, and we can join each other in new forms of understanding. So if I understand what you're saying correctly, you're proposing that we blur the limits of what counts as therapy. And in doing so, I would be hopeful that our ability to craft better contexts of conversation may help us move different ways to move forward in the face of these challenging times. And what I really like about this is the idea that if we're thinking about process and not content, if process is more important here than any kind of content itself, that can take several shapes and forms, right? So it could either be you're speaking one-on-one to one client, but you're mindful that, that client's problem is not their own. So for example, we've had so many fires in Brazil over the past month. And there's a lot of people with climate anxiety here these days. And someone asked me, what do I do with my patients who are anxious about climate change? And the first thought that comes to mind is, it makes sense to be anxious, doesn't it? Is it our job to like make people not anxious about something that important? So if you just start by questioning the taken for granted assumption that anxiety, pathology, so pathology, you have to fix it, and this is how you fix it. So if you just start by questioning that, and then you can ask multiple different questions, and you're just one-on-one, but also that could take several different forms, right? In different places and spaces, and etc.
Yeah, you and I had a conversation earlier about this proclivity towards happiness, that everyone needs their life to be happy and perfect and just on an upward climb, constantly getting better and better. And what that does is it pathologizes the norm of having a down day or being upset about something or being anxious. And so we have these competing discourses, really the discourse of, positivity. I'm not against positivity. I mean, I like it, but let's confront that everything isn't always so great. But this all brings for me to the fore this idea of, for such a long time, therapy has been focused on what we consider, and what you and I have written about, Pedro, with Emerson Hazara, is the micro level, that the interactions of therapists with their clients or people with each other, that micro level. But what we're talking about here, and what we wrote about in our book, was you can't divorce the macro level discourses that we live amongst from the micro level interactions in which we engage. And so if we have a macro level discourse of pathology, let's say, from a medical sense point of view, then, certain behaviors like being anxious because of climate change, you've got to control your anxiety because that's not a good thing. And the more you believe at the micro level that you need to control your anxiety and you have a problem, the more you maintain this macro level belief about what's healthy and what's not healthy, what's good and what's bad, and so forth. So here we are in this moment. And I guess for me, the call for all of us is to recognize that intricate relationship between what we do on a daily basis with other people and these larger, taken for granted ways of being that we are part of keeping them alive. And if we change, so back to what you were saying, Pedro, if we think differently about what counts as therapy, then we start changing that image of what counts as therapy. So we have, I think, a lot more power than we think we have. Or at least I think we should be self-reflexive in questioning everything that is taken for granted. And as you said, opening up other ways, like, oh, you're anxious about climate change. Well, everyone should be anxious about it, and that's a better response than, oh, you're anxious about climate change, let me prescribe a medication for you or something like that.
I like the flexibility that this brings into our practices because there is no one good answer for a particular question. You can always have your options. And so I started talking at the cultural level, what kinds of images of human and pathology and problems we were talking about. And then, of course, there's this more known way of doing therapy, which is one-on-one person, people like in the micro level. But also what you're talking about, when we consider that the micro and the macro cannot be separated, that also is a call for me to think about uh, us therapists as social activists,
Yeah.
in the sense that it goes beyond what we do when we are with our clients. What are our causes? How do we engage in the world to try and shape it in a better way? So the problems that our clients or patients are bringing to us, maybe they wouldn't be problems in the first place if we were living in a different world. So I think that's also an important call for therapists. How do you participate, or how do we participate in maintaining, in recreating, or in changing these macro level discourses that are really part of every person's life that come to us?
Yeah, I think the idea of therapy as a form of social activism is really important and generative, just really kind of opens up all sorts of possibilities. But I would extend that beyond therapy. I think there are a lot of professions where, you know, you are social activists. Certainly my uh, adult life as a professor, you know, I see very much as opening the possibility to change. And what a privileged position to be able to be dealing with young people and introduce them to other ways of thinking about the world instead of the taken for granted dominant discourses that float around us. So yeah, I think my my desire would be that everyone would be, to borrow a term from Gianfranco Cecchine, everyone would be irreverent towards, you know, the idea of what therapy is, and kind of use the resources that you already have, because those are the things, that's the way you connect with people, right? And, you know, I have this belief that most people who become therapists or go into the helping professions do so because they've had a lifetime of people around them saying, oh, it's so good to talk to you. You always help me. You know, you have such great ideas and so forth, you know. So, but then when you go into your training, all that is washed away. All those resources for being with people at that micro level are replaced with theories and techniques and methods, strategies, and we kind of lose our way of being with people that maybe propelled us in the first place to this profession. So yeah, I think to confront the issues and challenges that we face today, I think irreverence and really realizing that there are so many resources that we already have that may not have been sanctioned as a therapeutic modality, let's say. And I wonder, so here's the question, do we need therapy as a profession?
So that's where I was going, because what you're saying, it's actually a challenge to therapy as a profession, and it might be uncomfortable to consider that, to look at that. To me, I think what's important is if we really should start questioning our taken for granted understandings of therapy and our taken for granted understandings of what it means to be a professional. Because the minute you become a professional, then you're just, this is what you have to do, and this must be done, and that's what the code says, and you're so serious about yourself. And sometimes that seriousness about yourself makes you forget about being serious about the relationship,
Yeah.
about what's going on right here, right now with the other person. So it is an invitation into a very uncomfortable place of questioning what you already know.
Yeah, and I think that uncomfortable place is loaded with vulnerability, and I think being vulnerable being willing to be vulnerable is what probably allows us to connect with people in more meaningful ways. It's very easy to hide behind the armor of professionalism. And again, I think that vulnerability is humanizing.
Yes.
But I'm wondering if we should open this up and see what others are thinking and what challenges you're confronting, or how you think about confronting challenges, or you want to tell us that what we're talking about is not important or whatever.
Okay, so I want to say thank you for the course, and you have shared it all. I think when you make the statement about the colonizing, I mean, or they come to the issue about therapy, as what we should consider it, and I think it's true. Yes, we should. Because everybody who find themselves at their lowest point in time would need somebody to talk to. So some of the mistake and some of what we have experienced in the past is when we come to the point where we think that we know it all, and where we know the solution to every problem that people have. And personally, what I've experienced is some people who found themselves in some of the horrible things and they are broken and other things, sometimes they just need people presence around them. And sometimes I think it is more important to allow them to start the conversation instead of us starting the conversation. Apparently, you may not be the first person to meet with them during their crisis. Apparently, other people have met with them also, and you don't know that what you are going to say has already been said. And so when you go and saying the same thing, sometimes they get annoyed, and it looks like your presence is just like nothing. And so some of the mistake I think we have made, we are quick to talk, especially in the presence of people, our clients. I mean, in the presence of our clients. And I think I have learned that it's most often important that our clients should sometimes start a conversation. Then you get it going better. Then you sometimes you call yourself quote unquote expert. You start something that may not want to be heard, and you stir them up, and they get so. And sometimes so I sure.
Yeah. Now, what you're saying, Cooper, reminds me of when Harleen Anderson talks about us being guests in someone else's life, which is a nice way of putting it. You know, that we don't, even if we are the professionals, let's not call ourselves experts, but even if we're the professionals, we're still a guest in someone's life, and so we don't have to start the conversation. Yeah.
I think what we
That
do
also,
is
oh,
a
sorry,
privilege.
Lindsay.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Cooper.
No,
Sorry.
please go ahead. I would like to listen to you.
I first of all, I just want to say thank you for raising these issues, because I struggle with myself with them on a daily basis. I no longer do therapy as we've traditionally thought about it. I work in a fairly large, not-for-profit healthcare system, and I am the director of the Wellbeing Center, which has shifted my context enormously. And I live in a medical world. The dominant discourse is not one that I embrace or that fits for me. And I'm very well appreciated and needed in my job. By the same token, I don't know that I'm necessarily valued. And so I really think we need to move from this individualistic therapy model to a more public health model that opens up the possibility for really taking a relational approach to everything that we do. I think by necessity, we are social change agents. All the work I do, I see is kind of bucking against the norm. But one of the merits of age is that nobody gives you a hard time anymore. I get away with stuff that other people can't get away with. But it still leaves me feeling rub with what I do every day. As an example, somebody said, well, I was helping some nurses deal with really adjusting to becoming nurses and their professional development. And somehow we were doing a role play or something, and and it was about somebody who was grieving something. And one of the nurses said, well, you have to tell them about the stages they're going to go through. You can imagine, Sheila. I was like, I said, well, actually, nowhere else in medicine do we prescribe symptoms. Why would you want to prescribe symptoms in mental health care? And she said, but that's evidence-based, Wendy. I always have everybody call me Wendy. I don't go by any titles or whatever. I'm just me with you. That's it. And I said, no, actually, maybe it was in 1980, but it's not anymore. And, I'm questioned it as being helpful to tell people that they're doing it wrong. And they were kind of put off by my even saying that. And then the person who I report to over me said, oh, I heard that you really hurt people's feelings because you were telling them that there are no stages of grief. And I said, well, there aren't. And she said, well, I know that, but they felt put down. So this is where I struggle all the time for me and my own sense of purpose and satisfaction in what I do. And I once was in one of these conversations here with Ken quite some time ago. And I asked him, what do you do at the end of the day after you've been doing all this kind of trying to effect changes and do things differently? And he said, I don't know. What do you do? God bless Ken. And I said, well, at the end of the day, I try to think about the people I connected with. And that helps me stay satisfied.
Yeah.
But I think there's a whole big shift happening. And I'm so glad that you raised this. Thank you so much, you two.
Thanks, Wendy. Thanks for your comments. I see S. George. I'm sorry, I don't know your first name. You've had your hand raised, and then the others who have the icon of the hand raised came later. So I'll give it to you. You're muted.
I had unmuted myself. No?
Now you're good.
Okay, thank you. I'm struggling a little bit with the technology, trying to put my first name, which is Shanti, trying to find the icon to raise my hands. But somehow I've broken through, which may be a good omen for the discussion that we are having. Thank you to you and to Pedro and to Wendy, and I look forward to hearing the other contributions. I hesitate to raise my voice because I'm not a therapist, or aren't I? I'm an anthropologist, but I believe that everyone is an anthropologist. It's just that I've had more formal training and more self-conscious usage of the practices of anthropology. So similarly, am I not a therapist? Do I not have these conversations that you and Pedro have been talking about in some way? I would indeed underline and uphold all that has been said about broadening relational conversations. If I could give a very quick example here, in Britain, some time ago, it was found that suicide rates among white working class young men were remarkably high. And the response that was found was to create talking circles where these men were generally to be found in the gym, in the pub, in the laundrette, and just give them a place where they could be part of such conversations. So, and to go back to social constructivism, if we could make that part of daily conversation in general, and not just in the matter of therapy, I think a great deal of the battle will be won already. We can even think about this problematic term, client, which we don't seem to be able to get away from. The conversational partner, the interlocutor. I'll stop there. I'll just say how stimulating I found this conversation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. Really nice. Sarah.
Hello. Hi, Sheila. Good to see you again.
Yeah, you too.
And yeah, thank you, Pedro, and everybody. This is my first Taos Conversation event. So it's like, feels like I've been walking in the desert and I've come upon an oasis. I very much relate to the, you know, I'm grateful that I work at a group practice that's very supportive of the approach that I take and agrees a lot, but I still feel quite isolated in my ideas and find it difficult to engage with people about these ideas or get out of the biomedicalization of care for people. And particularly, I think today I'm really feeling the like tension between, you know, I think Pedro referenced this at the beginning, but like clients come in with this very in-depth vocabulary of what's wrong with them based on concepts from what I call therapy land. And so much, it's very difficult. And the tension between how they're understanding themselves based on these ideas and any other understanding, that gap often feels so wide and difficult to traverse. And yeah, it just gets very confusing. And I also like to sometimes just put down this sort of oppositional energy. I don't want to be in opposition necessarily to other providers or even these ideas, but I do feel like I need to stand for or against things in my conversations with people. But really traversing that gap between these different ways of understanding is can just be challenging.
Yeah.
Really grateful to have a space to just share that.
Yeah, thanks, Sarah. I just want to say I really agree 100% with you of not making, you know, other ways of being professionals the bad guy, you know, like, is there a way to kind of expand and connect? Yeah. So thanks for that. Arlene Katz.
Hey, Sheila. Hi, everybody. So much has been said, resonates, of course, and I think it was, I also am a stranger in a strange land, spending a lot of time in healthcare and medicine. So Wendy, yes, and so I have several thoughts, but one of them is, it means that we have to be what we talk about.
Mm-hmm.
That we have to really, so that when you're faced with a very different point of view, you have to figure out a way to honor it and navigate it. Otherwise, you become, you know, in opposition, as you were just saying, Sheila. And so there's a kind of, dare we say, humility. Do you ever try to say in a medical meeting something about the importance of humility? It's a very interesting moment. But the other thing I notice is the importance of, as a being it, is the absence of words in interdisciplinary settings like relational, like social, like context. Paul Farmer talks about the importance of the socializing disciplines. And this is even in psychology, the whole absence of those words. And again, the importance that I'm very influenced also by anthropology, because you're honoring the way of being of other people, and you're entering into spaces that you normally wouldn't be in and have to figure out a way to make meaning. And that means, as I said, you have to be it. I remember, I don't know, Sheila, if you were at one of these meetings, I remember at a meeting in Milano where we're so full of all these wonderful ideas, and someone says, "This is wonderful, but what do we do when we get back?" You know, how do you live this? How do you live this? So those are just some of my thoughts. I mean, like, for example, if someone is presenting research and there's an interesting finding and the person ignores it and says, "Oh, well, that's an outlier." Well, what about the creativity and the openness that comes from embracing those moments that don't exactly fit? And the other word I'll just say that I've been looking at a lot is, how do you shift assumptions? How do you notice them? And how do you shift assumptions when you notice that? And I've written about that as well. So this is great. We wouldn't go as far as to embrace John Lewis to say we should get into good trouble. We won't talk about that, but it might feel.
I've used that line when I have been talking about these things. I love that notion of good trouble. Yeah, thank you to everyone who's offered comments. I do think, yeah, isn't it funny the way that we categorize people's problems? So, this is what anxiety looks like, this is what depression looks like, and yet it's so everybody's an outlier, to use the language you're using, Arlene, that I think the intent is to always meet the person, but oftentimes in the helping professions, it's just a category, that gets treated. So, Pedro, what are your thoughts?
Well, thank you everybody who has shared their own thoughts. And one thing that comes to mind is repeatedly in these kinds of conversations, we have people saying, it's so good when we're together, and I feel so isolated when I'm back at work or, in my context. And one thing that I've learned is that whenever you voice that kind of concern or that kind of, uncertainty, there is always someone else who's going to resonate with that. Perhaps not entirely, perhaps they won't agree fully with you, but there's people, not everybody is as comfortable as they look like. Maybe they're just being professionals in that sense. So one thing that I've learned that's very helpful is, how do I find what connects me to other people here? What are the cracks in the system where I can start my work from? And that's usually, it gives me some kind of hope to just break it down and what's the next step, and coming from that assumption that there's always unvoiced discomfort. So that's what comes to my mind as I listen to everybody.
Yeah, that unvoiced discomfort is the I'm blanking on the word now, the imposter syndrome, right? That everybody, you would never admit it to anyone else, like why are people taking advice from me? But everybody has that. When you start talking to people, they all say, yeah, I don't feel like I'm the professional or the expert here. I don't know what I'm doing. And if we could hold on to that, because that's the vulnerability that I was talking about before, to, makes us much more able to be in tune with others with whom we're interacting. And then, like you said, Wendy, at the end of the day, that's what you hold on to, not the problems, but the people that you connected with.
Yeah. So Sheila,
oh.
Oh, sorry, go ahead, Bob.
Yeah, Bob, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. The thought I've been having, and particularly from your comment a moment ago, Sheila, is this is actually a really, really hard profession. People go into it thinking, oh boy, I'll get to help people. Yeah. And you don't recognize how challenging it is to one's own psychology, to your own history. As we all grew up, started life as children, whatever the vicissitudes that were there, and then stay on with us. And so, of course, we look for theories and models and ways to help us decide what it is we're supposed to do when the question is so enormous. And so I have a slight disagreement, though, with the proposition. I don't think anybody can do this. I think part of the commitment is this whole business of constantly sharpening the instrument, that we commit to our own work in ways that the general public, that other people tend not to. I think the same thing would be true of anthropology or any study of being a human being. You're always looking in the mirror at the same time as you are looking at others. So, when people talk about, I talked to a friend and they said, do this. And you think, oh, I wonder a little bit about your friend. I think that taking on the burden that the profession requires is an important piece of the process.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I don't think that this is a profession for everyone, for sure. What I would like to argue for is bringing more like human resources into that, instead of all the models, theories, techniques, and so forth. Yeah, but thanks for that.
And I just want to add something. I think it's Harleen Anderson who says that therapy is not any kind of it's not just any conversation, but maybe if we had better conversations in life, we wouldn't need so much therapy. So I also think that's a call to how do we culturally create a settings that we have better kinds of conversations, so we wouldn't be as needed.
Yeah, and particularly relevant in today's world, given the nature of the discourse that gets flown around. Certainly, politically, we see real problems.
So Sheila, in our invitation to this Taos Conversation, we promised that we would share some exciting news as well. And I'm wondering if this is a good time for us to do that.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. So in the middle of all of these conversations and me just, emailing Sheila back and forth, what do you think about this? And what do you think about that? I ended up inviting her and we created this new project, which is a different format from everything that the Taos Institute has done so far. So it's just an experiment that we're doing, and we're actually, we would like to share it with you and maybe invite you to join us in this new project. So I'm just going to show you, it's a little teaser that we've made introducing you to the project. It's just a minute and a half, and then maybe we could explain a little bit how that works, and if someone wants to join us, we would be very happy. Let me see how I share my screen. Share sound. Do you see my screen?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Don't hide your excitement about the ideas, because that's where the real liveliness comes from.
Hello, and welcome to All Things Therapy. My name is Pedro Martins. I am a clinical psychologist, and I will be your host. Sheila McNamee is Professor Emerita of Communication at the University of New Hampshire. She dedicated her career to understanding human processes of communication. In this course, you're going to learn and reflect about therapy in 4 different and exciting ways.
What's on your mind? What would you like to talk about?
I was thinking that we could have a conversation about how grief changes friendships and relationships.
But to me, there's a bigger issue that I would like to, expand on and hear your thoughts on, which is the issue of guilt.
Can we be curious about the processes that have brought people to the understandings and the meanings that they have?
Let's hope we don't get canceled.
Yeah.
So get a notebook, make some coffee or tea, and join us in the lively conversations of all things therapy. So, all things therapy is going to be the first self-paced online course that the Taos Institute is offering. It is composed of, those 4 different parts, and you can watch it at your own, pace for a whole year. So it's an experiment that we're doing. We would just like to invite whoever is, interested in that to follow up with these conversations, to join us. It's going to be available for registration only for a couple of days, for 5 days next week, starting on Monday. And if you have any questions, Alex is happy to help you, and so am I. So we just wanted to let you know that this is also coming. Yeah. Do you want to say something, Sheila?
Well, I just wanted to give you the credit, Pedro, because this was Pedro's brainchild, and we just had so much fun being in conversation over a few days when we were recording this. Just having the opportunity for a live consultation and supervision, talking about the basic ideas of social construction as they relate to therapy. And then really in that last segment, taking on some hot topics like difficult things that we've been talking about today, for example, it was just rich. And Pedro's such a great conversational partner. And so the whole project is 5.5 hours of conversation, right? And yeah, if you know someone who might be interested in it, if you're interested in it, as Pedro said, you can register on Monday through Friday next week, and that's just the limited time it'll be available.
Yeah. Did we forget to say something, Alex? Would you like to add anything?
Yes, I want to thank you both for bringing this to the Taos Institute. As you said, it's the first time that we are offering something in this format, so an online course, and it's video recordings that are just beautiful and inspiring, challenging conversations. So really, really exciting to be able to offer that. And so everyone who registered for this Taos Conversation will receive a follow-up email with a recording and with further details about like when to look for the announcement that will go out on Monday. And then of course that's open to anyone, so please feel free to share. And there's it will be also available through the Taos Institute Commons, so if you have questions between now and then, feel free to reach out to Pedro and Sheila through the Commons as a way to engage with them. And yes, any last words about today's conversation and how to move forward?
Yeah, any other comments or reflections from any of you? Any last words, Pedro, from you?
Yeah, I was just thinking that about the importance of, just creating or inventing spaces for the conversation to keep going, you know? So I am sure that things that I've heard here today are going to, you know, I'm going to take them further and talk with other people. So, you know, that's how this whole conversation strikes me. You know, we don't have to solve all the problems in the world at once. Let's just try and make it a better journey. That's how I am. And thank you, Sheila, for being a great conversational partner always.
Thank you,
I have a
Pedro.
question, Sheila. I have a question.
Hey, Dora.
Hi, Sheila. Hi,
Hi.
everybody. Well, we had so many questions, Sheila, through life, you know, so this, and we have spoke about this. I was thinking about, you know, the different issues that our colleagues presented. And I was wondering, you know, which would be the difference between talking to a client, you know, with whom you have to create a conversational space and you have to create, a conversational space about very serious issues, and talking, you know, to a colleague, a different colleague, you know, a physician, nurse, you know, you have to create a conversation there, you know, and we have been working on this since 50 years, you know. So I have been thinking, you know, what's the difference now than the differences that we had in the 70s, for example, with physicians or nurses? We already had a different paradigm, you know. So the issue is, how do you develop useful conversations across context and across disciplines? You know, what is so special about this issue if we have been practicing that for so many years?
I'm not sure we have been practicing that for so many years. You know?
I have, Sheila.
Oh, yeah, well,
I have, you know. So I and the people that we work with, that I work with, you know, we had. So perhaps the issue could be, you know, how do you start? And I'm suggesting this, how do you start new conversations across, you know, in a complex ecology, across disciplines, you know, and and then create resources for people, you know, to sort of expand their conversational areas and see which are the difficulties that emerge from working in complex ecologies. You know, which are the interfaces, you know, which are the difficult issues, because, you know, we really have been practicing this since Bateson, you know, across context, you know, and this has been a difference in our field for a very long time between people, you know, who are geared by expert models and people who are geared by conversational and relational models. Then we need to ask, you know, which are the resources that people feel that they need to be able to cross boundaries, you know? And
so I think, Dora, that you're right, that, and this, I think I see what we're talking about today as a call to action to, because I think we've lost a lot of that, trying to move across professions, across discourses, across boundaries. So I think Pedro and I both want to kind of, you know, give a shot in the arm of, you know, let's not get comfortable with what we've been doing. And and so on that note, I see that we are now out of time. So I want to thank you all very much for being here and sharing your thoughts with us. And we'll send you a copy of this recording. You can do what you want with it. Thank you. Thank you, Pedro.
Thank you, Sheila.
Thank you, everyone. Good to see you. Have a nice weekend.
Thank you, Pedro.
Thank you.
Mhm.